Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Kane. I am CPWR's Executive Director, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, CPWR's new Safety Climate Safety Management Information System, or what we lovingly call SC-SMIS. This new system builds on tools and resources CPWR began developing in 2016 to assist firms in measuring and strengthening their safety climate. With that, I'd like to formally introduce Dr. Linda Goldenhar, Director of CPWR's Evaluation and Research. Linda, over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. And as Chris said, today I'll be introducing you to our newest safety climate improvement resource, the SCSMIS. So the impetus behind creating the SCSMIS was the understanding that until all construction companies, even those with fewer resources, have the opportunity to assess their safety climate and strengthen it using evidence-informed safety management tools, the industry will continue experiencing high levels of adverse safety and health outcomes. So before I move on, I'm going to turn off my video because even though my router is literally right next to me, I often get an unstable signal and then everything freezes, and I don't want to take a chance. So I'm going to turn this off so you can see the slides and we won't have any problems. Okay. So to address the issue that I just mentioned, we built on CPWR's current safety climate resources, like Chris said, including the popular Safety Climate Assessment Tool, or SCAT, to create a new, easy-to-use, interactive, web-based system that construction companies of any size can use at no cost to achieve continuous safety climate and safety management improvement. And I know one of the questions that came in at the registration process was how much does it cost to use the SCSMIS? And so there is the answer to that question. So creating the SCSMIS over the last 2.5 years has been and continues to be a great team effort. The team includes me, Babak Memarian, Chris Lee, and Sherry Wilson from CPWR. Our very talented web designers and developers from Wood Street Inc. in Frederick, Maryland, and our important user development team, or UDT. The UDT is made up of 11 safety and health professionals or owners from small and medium-sized construction companies across the U.S. They met with us in person literally the week before everything shut down in 2020. And then virtually, they met with us virtually after that to review all of our materials, provide input on the design, and participate in usability testing to make sure the end product would be a valuable resource for the industry, particularly for small and medium-sized companies. So today I'm going to walk you through the features of the SCSMIS and show how each step builds on the prior one, provide safety professionals, contractors, and other users with a greater understanding of a company's job site safety climate through measurement, access to evidence-based resources to strengthen it, a tool to help put resources into action, and then also the ability to keep track of plans and set reminders for continuous improvement. All right, so let's get to the SCSMIS. This is the homepage, and here visitors can watch 2 short videos about the SCSMIS. One provides a high-level description of the system, and the other is a brief tutorial on how to use it. There's also a very informative FAQ sheet the visitor can view and download, and a link to some testimonials. Folks can also decide to create an account or enter as a guest. Guests have access to some, but not all of the features. And I'll talk about this more at the end of the presentation. So for the talk today, I'm going to pretend that I'm a safety professional working for a residential building company in Detroit, Michigan called Arlington Homes. And I want to show you how straightforward it was for me to use the SC-SMIS features. So after I watched the how-to video, I created an account. I entered our company name and zip code, which I learned from the video allows the system to create a unique ID it will use to keep my company's information together. Next, I indicated yes, Arlington Homes is a construction company because the system only uses data from construction companies to calculate benchmark safety climate scores. I entered my name and email address as the primary administrator responsible for using the system. And then I was also given the option to add an alternate admin, so I added my colleague, Sherry Wilson. For our login credentials, I entered my email and a password that both of us will use to log into the system. At the bottom of the page, the system asked me to verify that I'm not a robot, which I'm not. And then when I verified that, I clicked the create my account button. So at that point, a window popped up telling me to check my inbox using the email that I had entered to see if I'd received an email verification message. It specified that if I didn't, I should add no reply SCSMIS.com to my spam filter's white list. Luckily, I did receive the verification email and clicked on the verify email address, which took me directly to the main menu page. Of course, on subsequent visits, I would log in to my account from the home page to get here. The menu page gave me access to all the SC-SMIS features and functions. So the first thing I did was to click on Learn About the SCAT button. I could have also clicked on Learn More About the SCAT SC button. Both would take me to the Safety Climate Assessment Options page, which you see here. And here I read about and downloaded CPWR's Safety Climate Assessment Tool, or SCAT, and also the Safety Climate Assessment Tool for Small Contractors, or SCAT-SC. I learned that both instruments were developed with extensive industry input, including helping to identify the 8 key leading indicators of safety climate listed here that companies should measure and monitor to improve safety climate. I also learned that the instruments are a bit different from each other in that the SCAT provides an in-depth assessment of employee perceptions of job site safety climate maturity, while the SCAT-SC is a basic needs assessment that gives companies a snapshot of the safety management activities they are currently doing and what they might consider doing in the future. So after I reviewed both of these and looked them over, I decided to use the SCAT and clicked on the SCAT Plan and Schedule button at the bottom. So the first thing I did was enter the date when our folks could start completing the SCAT. And I decided I wanted to invite 3 groups of employees to take the survey: the supervisors and field staff at the Silver Spring project, the management at the home office, and the management at the home office. This would allow me to compare the safety climate perception scores across these 3 groups. So in order to do that, I needed to label and add each group separately. The system already pre-populated the company field with Arlington Homes. In the second box, I then entered the job site or location, and then the job titles, followed by the number of employees in each group, and I clicked Add Group. I did that for each group, and as I did, each group was added to the list in the table with your names, the Arlington Homes, the job site, and then the job title and the date. Once these three groups are added, I clicked the Submit button at the bottom, which took me to the Arlington Homes SCAT results page, where I saw each group was listed with the start date and the number of employees in the group that I had entered on the previous page. At the same time, Sherry and I received 3 separate emails, each with one of the group labels in the subject line. The instructions for the administrator in the first highlighted area of the email says, here's a sample email you can use and modify, inviting employees to take the SCAT. It also says, remember to keep the unique URL as is. This last bit is critical because the employees in that target group must click on this URL contained in the email text for their SCAT responses to be included in the group's safety climate scores. Back up at the top, there's also a link to a PDF that describes options for administering the survey to employees who don't have access to email, including how to create a QR code that's linked to this unique URL. That information, by the way, is also in the FAQ document. The sample text in the non-highlighted area contains ideas for what to include in the invitation email, such as why they're being asked for their input, who developed the survey, that their responses are completely anonymous, and that the company never has access to the data. Again, the text is completely modifiable, but the URL must remain intact. You can see down at the bottom, it has options for entering the CEO, safety director, whatever name. And in our pilot study, one of the companies did something interesting. At first, the email came out from the safety director, and they got a fairly good response. But then the CEO followed up like a couple weeks later with another email, and modified it again, keeping the URL, and the response rate jumped. So that's just something to think about. So to get the emails ready to forward to each group, I removed the highlighted section up at the top and made a few edits to the main text. But prior to that, I created my own little test group so I could actually see what employees would see when they clicked on their own URL link. I'm going to show you just a few sample pages of the SCAT, which I completed at my desk on a laptop, but I could have used my phone or a tablet. Excuse me. The opening page of both the SCAT and the SCAT SC has a welcome and thank you message, plus a brief instructions about how the questions are laid out on the subsequent pages. I chose to answer the survey in English, confirmed I wasn't a robot again, and then clicked the button to take the SCAT. So I read the first safety climate activity that's written below the progress bar at the top. I chose the response that I thought best reflects how that activity is carried out at Arlington Homes. And then I clicked Next to move on to the next item. After answering all the items, I was taken to the final page where I could print my own responses, not everybody in the company, but just mine, or hit close. After completing the test survey, I forwarded the modified invitation emails that I was telling you about to those 3 groups, and then I periodically logged on and visited the Arlington Homes results page to monitor how many folks in each group had responded compared to the total that I had entered. And then once enough had done so, I ran a comparison report, which allowed me to compare the 3 group scores in one report. And I also ran a combined report, which merges the data across the groups together to provide company level scores. Both types of SCAT reports are laid out the same, so I'm just going to share a few shots of our comparison report. Before I show you the report, though, I wanted to mention another cool feature. Once the individuals in a group have completed the assessment and you run the report, you can archive the group data. Then, when you conduct a follow-up assessment with the same group, let's say a year or so later, you can archive that follow-up report and then run a comparison report with those 2 groups, the same groups at different years, to see if there had been any changes in that group's score, hopefully due at least in part to the safety management initiatives you've implemented. Okay, back to the report. So on the first page, the employee groups who had been invited to participate are displayed at the top and also color-coded above the chart on the first page. The chart and data table show our company's overall average safety climate scores, plus the scores of each of the 8 indicators, and it uses a scale from inattentive to exemplary. The benchmark scores are shown as horizontal gray bars on the chart and are also presented in the data table. These benchmark scores are based on the average scores of respondents from other construction companies, as I mentioned earlier, who have taken the SCAT since it came out in 2016, which to date is close to 9,000 responses. Not 9,000 companies, but 9,000 responses. So on subsequent pages of the report, I was able to review and compare the scores for each indicator, each of those 8 indicators. For example, these are Arlington Homes' result for the indicator encouraging owner-client involvement, which, as you can see here, and also from the chart and data I just showed, could use some strengthening and improving. At the end of the report, there's a statement telling me that now I know more about Arlington Homes safety climate maturity, I could consider going to the SC-SMIS repository to find evidence-based management resources I could use to strengthen low scoring indicators. And I'm going to show you that, but before going there, I just want to briefly show you the layout of the SCAT SC report, which is a bit different than the SCAT that I just showed, the SCAT report, because the questions and responses are designed for needs assessment rather than a maturity score. Okay, on to the resource repository. So in the repository, there are over 80 different safety management policies, guidelines, procedures, and templates that target one or more of the 8 leading indicators measured by the SCAT and SCAT-SC. There are definitely some CPWR resources in the repository, such as information about our Foundations for Safety Leadership training program. But the vast majority of the resources were shared with us by safety professionals from across the country who are currently using them to strengthen job site safety climate at their own companies. So based on the results in the Arlington Homes report, I decided to start our safety climate improvement efforts by targeting involving owners and client indicator. When I clicked on that button, you can see below that the system listed all of the resources in the repository designed to strengthen this particular indicator. There are between 8 and 11 different resources targeting each of the different indicators. So you can see that there's English version and Spanish version of each resource. I decided to download the English version of the contractor pre-qualification policy. And since all of the resources in the repository are formatted as either Word or PowerPoint documents, I was able to tailor this policy for our needs. So the next step was to create a plan to help me put this resource into action. I started by filling the plan out by identifying the target group for this resource, which is our clients. And I entered my goal, which was to get the clients to use this procedure when hiring subcontractors. And then I came up with 2 action steps. Although I could have entered up to 5, I stopped at 2. I could always enter more. I made myself the lead and I added the start date. Before I could complete the plan, though, I had to think a little bit more about what information I'd collect to know if I'd achieved my goal. So I clicked down at the bottom the Save Create button, knowing that I'd need to come back later to enter that information. When I clicked on that button, the system took me to the action plan, the active action plan page, which listed the plan that I had just completed as pending. So a week or so later, I logged back into my account, went back to this plan to edit it, where I entered the missing information, and then I also changed the first action item from pending to being in progress because I had started tailoring the document for Arlington Homes. As I finished carrying out the action steps, I changed their status from in progress to complete, so when they were all done, the system actually moved the plan to the completed action plan page. Also on this page, I was able to schedule a reminder to conduct a follow-up SCAT a year from the first one so that I could continue assessing safety climate improvement at Arlington Homes. So now that I've shown you the SC-SMIS features available to an account holder, I'd like to briefly show you what guests are able to use. So here's the guest menu, and you can see that compared to the one I showed you at first, the account holder, some of the features are grayed out. However, they can still learn about the 2 types of safety climate assessments, but they can't conduct one unless they create an account. They can also access the repository, where they can review and download any of the resources. They can also download a blank copy of the action plan, but they can't complete it within the system because they don't have an account. And the system doesn't know where to keep it. So again, down at the bottom, we offer them the option to create an account. So finally, before I finish, I'd like to just share some user feedback that we've already received, not just from our pilot companies, because we've been piloting this over the fall and continue to get feedback from pilot companies, but from other companies who have started using it. So here's the first one, and I'll just give you a minute to read that. And one more. Okay. And let's see. I'll start my video, back up, and ask for any questions. Chris will probably do that, right?
Yeah. Hey, Linda. We do have a few questions, and I think you answered some of them during your talk, but might as well repeat them if you haven't. But then a couple have come in through the chat, and I just wanted to remind folks in the webinar, if you type in the chat or the Q&A, we should be able to get to your questions. Some of the ones that came in before the webinar were not really appropriate to the SCMIS. Not they weren't inappropriate, they just weren't applicable. But one that did come in is, what is the cost for utilizing this program?
Yes, and I mentioned that in the beginning, but certainly can say it again, is as with all of CPWR resources, the cost to use the SCSMIS is absolutely nothing.
Okay, great. Yeah, and just to reiterate for that, this was created through our cooperative agreement with NIOSH, and it's our taxpayers' money. So this is open and free for everyone. And a similar question came in through the chat is access allowed by both union and non-union contractors?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
This is available to the construction industry, small, medium, large, union, non-union, regardless of trade, regardless of anything. And in fact, we've had companies that aren't construction companies use the SCAT, which is why we actually ask that question to identify yourself as either a construction company or not for those benchmark scores.
So non-construction could use this, but we wouldn't count them in the benchmarks that you talked about.
That's correct.
Okay, it's free and open for everyone. Here's a question that came in through the Q&A. What proportion of the UDT members are engaged in roofing in small companies? You recall that?
I don't recall that. I'm trying to go through the list in my head. I know there was electrical, at least one, I know from Texas. I'm trying to remember. At least one. But I've had a number of roofing companies since then use the SCSMIS. I just spoke with one the other day. I'm sorry, 135 companies have signed up so far, and I'm having some conversations. But yeah, Tom Shanahan from the NRCA and Jessica actually presented this a few months ago. And so we got a number of folks to participate in the pilot and use who are roofing companies.
I think we can probably follow back if any of your UDT members were roofing contractors with the person who asked that question, because we know him. So what we wouldn't do, though, I think is important to clarify, and I'll state it, and you can kind of describe this a little bit, is if someone uses the SC-SMIS, we don't share their information at all. And did you explain the firewall at all that we have?
Well, the information goes into a secure database, as part of the SCSMIS. We don't share any of that information with anyone. We have a privacy, didn't show this, but there's a privacy policy at the bottom about not sharing information, not selling information about company or anything like that. But we don't share information with the companies or with other companies. Yeah.
Right. So that benchmarking data is completely blind. We don't know who those and nobody can tell who those companies are.
No, it's just averages. I mean, I don't even have the company names. Those are just averages. Yeah.
Great. So some folks may be familiar with SCAT and SCAT for small contractors that you talked about as kind of building blocks to this new website we have and tool we have. It's much more operationalized now than the SCAT and SCAT small contractor. How do they relate to each other? I mean, is the SCAT still sitting out there? Or is it now just completely integrated into this new system?
So I'm still sharing, aren't I?
Yes.
So let me get back. How do I get rid of this? Oops. I want to get rid of this and just go back. So the SCAT does not exist just on its own out as a website, which is where it started. So how it's incorporated, historically, people would get a safety climate score, and then you'd make recommendations, do this, do this, do this. But what the SC-SMIS does is actually provide the user with evidence-informed tools to carry out those recommendations. So this is the part where the SCAT or the SCAT SC comes in to conduct the assessment, run reports, and then with scores in mind, use those scores. So the SCAT is now completely subsumed within the SC-SMIS, so a company can get a much more comprehensive use of the data. So then they go with those scores, they review the scores, and they go to the resource repository and select and download desired resources, create the plan, and then keep track of the plan. So this gives you the continuous improvement cycle of measuring, planning, and improving, which is incorporated into the SC-SMIS logo. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Another question that's come in is if we want to use the system as a guest, can we go back later and see the results again?
If you enter the system as a guest, you can't run a report, you can't do an SCAT. You can just learn about the SCAT and you can get resources. If you want to participate in this whole continuous improvement cycle I showed, you would need to create an account.
Okay.
And yeah.
Great. Another question that's come in is, can we compare our results within the same trades? Like if I'm a roofing contractor or an electrical contractor, can I compare my results to other roofing or electrical contractors?
No, we do not collect that information.
Okay. This is a great question. What constitutes the size of the company, or what's our definition of the company size? Small, medium, large, 50 or less? What's our definition?
Well, it depends on what you mean by our. CPWR, using fatality data, defines small as between 1 and 19, medium at 20 to 99, and large as anything over 100 and over. But I know that with my UDT, when I recruited them in the beginning, asking them to define, how do they define themselves? What I came to understand was they defined small as below 50, medium is between 50 and 250, and large is anything above 250. But it's not just based on employees, it's also based on business, money, how much you make during the year of business that you bring in. So it's a really interesting question. And so it comes down to how you define yourself in some ways. Again, this is open to everyone to use.
Great. And here's another question. There's a couple questions to this. Well, there's from the same person. But one question is, I'd like to see this model be used in Canada, and I do believe the internet goes to Canada. So I don't. Is there any prohibition about people using it from other countries?
Well, let me answer that with a huge smile. So one of the companies, Maple Renders from Canada, is using the SC-SMIS and is part of the pilot. Modern Niagara, also from Canada, was one of the original SCAT users, like back in 2017 and 18. And they actually did surveys across the provinces where they have locations and compared scores. They've now done 2 follow-ups, and so they use the SCAT a lot. In addition, the what's it called? The LOC, the League of Champions, which is part of the Ontario governmental, Linda, I know Linda Robson may be on this if you want to, I don't have it in front of me. Ontario General Contractors Association, thank you, Eric Schmidt. They have just rolled out the SCSMIS and the SCAT as part of their effort to help their member companies strengthen job site safety, climate, and safety management improvement. And NORCAT is helping them roll that out and facilitate that.
All right, great. One commenter said the website is in violation of their internet usage policy and is blocked. And I have no idea why that is. Your own company is blocking access, but we promise you that we're being nice. I don't know, Linda, have you seen that before?
So what you need to do is get your data management people to add, or if you can know how to do it, your IT people, to add no reply SCSMIS.com to the friends list or the white list. So it's, you got to tell your company to add that.
Okay.
Eric, someone just sent me are you getting, see, now I don't get the chats because I'm still here.
Okay. Eric said that Aaron, anyone can join the League of Champions, and you put the website up there. Jessica, if you can post it to anyone, the Canadian organization, and also it's the Ontario General Contractors Association.
Yeah.
There's a couple other questions I wanted to get to, Linda. One gentleman asked, can a company set up separate accounts based on type of work?
Sure. You would just, so we asked for zip code because we were afraid maybe there's a, Miller Electric Company in Tennessee and a Miller Electric Company in Madison, Wisconsin or something. And so we do ask for zip code just to separate that out. But if you wanted to, if a company wanted to do it by trade, they want to identify that in the company name if they want separate accounts.
And also they could, if it was one company, but say had different
trades
divisions, they could simply set up different links for their different divisions under their profile, the way you showed the profile setup, correct?
Yes, because if you, let me get to that. Oh, before I go back, can you see this where it says add SCSMIS.com and no reply SCSMIS to your spam filter whitelist?
Right.
If it's not letting you through. That's for the question you just asked before. But to your point, Chris, if you set up if a company sets up a different account for different entities, they won't be able to look at the data across those entities within the same report. So, for example, I could have put, Arlington Homes, sheet metal foreman, Arlington Homes, electrical or plumbers and pipe fitters, whatever. So you can create different groups within the one account if you want to more easily compare results across those groups.
Right. Linda, another question's come in. It says, Are the recommendations to improve specific to the results or just generic list of action items?
They are specific to the indicators. So it's up to the company to decide, which indicators to focus on. So we can't target results for every company that, creates an account. What we do is link the measurement of the indicators in the SCAT to the indicators and the resources in the repository. So it's up to the company to determine whether they, where to target, which low scoring indicators they want to target. But the resources are specific to those indicators. And our user development team, and also, we had companies like Turner, Skanska, Demio, Modern Niagara in Canada, other companies who knew about the indicators, who were participating early on. We asked them to share resources that they use to target and strengthen those indicators.
Great. Another question's come in is, does it matter if you're a subcontractor or a general contractor?
Not at all.
All right. I think we've gotten to the end of the questions. I hope I didn't miss anything from someone who really needed an answer. Let me just double check one place. I think we're good. Oh, there's another one. So it's related to the size of the contractor. The question is, what size contractor is this more directed towards?
Well, I have had, it depends on the company. It's directed towards any size contractor. That's the point. It's, as I showed you, using it is pretty darn straightforward. And I've had a lot of feedback how easy it is to use it. Watching the video walks you through, not the detail that I walked you through today, but gives you a higher level sense of kind of the different features and how to use it. But it's for any size contractor. I mean, Modern Niagara has 3,500 employees, and some of the pilot companies that are using it have, 50, sometimes some 25, maybe 125.
Wonderful. All right. Well, with that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you very much, Linda, for presenting this. We are really excited about this new tool that's available to the construction industry. We think it goes a long way towards improving safety climate, but also improving safety and health programs for construction. This is a great place to start if you don't know where you want to go with your safety program, to see, how you measure up against the leading indicators that are very widely accepted. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks everyone who participated today, and thank you, Linda, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.